We're about to start, but we're trying to get our live.
Oh, yes, go on. Well done. Well done.
Sorry. Behave. We're just trying to get the live stream sorted and then we'll be off. Thank you. Righty-ho. Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Overview Committee meeting on the 22nd of January 2026. I'm your chair, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit and by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. If anyone needs assistance leaving the building in the event of emergency evacuation, please let us know. The organiser of the meeting will then tell you when it's safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting with a roll call of committee members present, which will include declarations of interest. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm you are present, and please state whether you have any declarations of interest in items on the agenda or not. I will now pass over to Sarah to do the roll call. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bethany Collins, please.
Present, thank you, and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Collins.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall.
Present, no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hartnell.
Present, no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Present, I'm the ward member for Lappet.
Councillor McKinder.
Declarations.
Councillor Vidal. Councillor Wilson. Not here, and I can confirm that we'll call it.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other councillors in this meeting who want to declare an interest in any of the items listed on the agenda that may affect their ability to remain in the meeting? Nope, that's all fine. Thank you. Agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 30th of September 2025, pages 3 to 10. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting? If so, please state what they are. If not, are we all agreed that it's a correct record? Yes, agreed. Thank you. I will sign the minutes. Agenda item 2, apologies. Over to you, Sarah, to confirm apologies received. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have apologies from councillors Aurora Bailey, Brian Bailey, Kim Bloxham, Tim Dumper, Paula Fernley and John Heath.
Thank you, Sarah. Agenda item 3 has already been done through our roll call. The agenda item 4, public speaking, we have none. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, confidential exempt items, there are none. So moving swiftly on to agenda item 7, the landscape recovery programmes in East Devon, pages 11 to 35. I will now hand over to Charlie Plowden, the Assistant Director, Countryside, to introduce this item. Over to you, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm not Clinton Devon Estates, Charlie Plowden, East Devon District Council. Chair, first of all, I'd like to welcome and introduce our guest presenters for this evening, if you don't mind. So, on my left here, we have Beth Humphreys and we have Kendall Archer from Clinton Devon Estates, who are leading on the Heath to Sea Landscape Recovery Scheme. And on Beth's left is Gavin Saunders, who's leading on the Luppet Landscape Recovery Scheme, who are both going to do presentations for us this afternoon. And thank you very much for giving up your evenings to come along and inform us about these very exciting schemes. Before Beth gets her presentation loaded up, I just thought a couple of things I wanted to highlight with members. That there are 3 landscape recovery programmes. The third one is the Killerton Landscape Recovery Programme, being led by the National Trust. We did invite them, but they politely declined to attend. I think the information on their scheme has been submitted as part of the report and the supporting papers. So that is the third scheme that impacts here in East Devon. All 3 of these programmes help to support and deliver on a number of high priority areas that are within our council plan and also our service plans. In particular, they're helping us to meet our specific challenges that we identified with our declarations of a climate and nature emergency and helping to restore our much depleted natural environment. So, really welcome the focus and the emphasis on all of the 3 schemes to help us collectively meet those challenges, which are considerable. Also, more specifically, the scale and ambition of the programmes will again help support our wider ambitions that have been identified within our climate change strategy and our recently adopted trees, hedges and woodland strategy. Also, we're developing a landscape recovery plan as part of the Environment Act, which we have got to a almost final draft stage, and we'll be looking to bring that to Cabinet and wider consultation hopefully at the April Cabinet meeting. But within that local nature recovery plan, we will have identified priority habitats and species and how we seek to address those priority habitats and species going forward. And again, the landscape recovery programmes align and synergise with the work that we've already identified through our local opportunities map that we sort of developed. So really strong and positive alignment there. And just finally, I've spoken to both national landscapes teams within East Devon, the East Devon National Landscape Team and the Blackdown Hills National Landscape Team. And both teams have recognised how incredibly important these recovery programmes are in helping to deliver their statutory management plans going forward. And I know there's been positive dialogue with both of those national landscape teams with the 2 projects that are being presented here tonight. So there's really good sort of join up going on here with these schemes, with us as an organisation, but also wider partnerships that the council is supporting. So I personally, I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted. I'm really excited about what all 3 schemes could potentially deliver for us. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it in the presentations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we can now hand over to Beth from Clinton Devon Estates. Thank you.
Thank you. So firstly, I want to pass on the apologies from Kirsty Ellis, the project manager, and Sam Bridgewater, our project director. They did hope to be here with you today, but unfortunately have a clash of meetings. The Heath to Sea Landscape Recovery Project, which isn't on the screen, sorry. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second, please. There we go. So the Heath to Sea Landscape Recovery Project has a vision of creating a diverse landscape that is rich in nature and ecologically healthy, but it's also going to remain and be an even more productive landscape, and that includes food production, net zero, timber and access. And we aim to do this by building connectivity across the whole landscape through floodplain restoration, woodland creation and working along the river corridor. So landscape recovery is one of the 3 government programmes to enhance nature. You will probably be aware of sustainable farming initiatives and countryside stewardship. Both of those work on a 3 to 5 year basis. Landscape recovery is looking at a 20-year plus basis. And it's really to support the delivery of national biodiversity, water and woodland targets that you'll find in the Environment Act and the 30 by 30 commitment. We submit to DEFRA all of our plans in March this year, and throughout the rest of the year we have this assurance phase, a lot of back and forth between DEFRA and our project. When we then get, but hopefully when we get the agreement with DEFRA, it will go forward and start that 20-year programme of activity, which will probably, hopefully, be early 2027. The delivery, as Charlie has mentioned, should support a number of strategies that the Council is working towards. To put it into context, this is our project area. We are about a third of the East Devon National Landscape. From the Newton Poppleford, which is on the A road towards the top of the map there, down to the Otter Estuary. The Otter Estuary in the last about 4 or 5 years ago had a massive salt marsh restoration project, very successful, that's happened, and our project is very much building on that. Bordered to both the east and the west, we have the Pebblebed Heaths, which together with the Otter Estuary make up the Pebblebed Heaths National Nature Reserve. So about 25% of our project area is currently managed for conservation under the National Nature Reserve. About 60% of the project area is farmed, either in the home farm, which is in-house in Clinton Devon Estates, which is the kind of golden yellow towards the northern part of the area, or through 14 different tenancies across the rest of the area. And then about 15% of our project area is woodland that is managed productively, and we are looking to enhance some of this woodland. So in total, we're looking to change land use on about 555 hectares across the area. The majority of this change will be down the river floodplain, and then on this area in the northeast corner, which we're calling Otterton Hill. So that is currently marginal land for agriculture at the moment, and we're looking to turn it into wilder wood pasture, wildflower meadow kind of area with large-scale conservation grazing across the area. The ambitions you see quoted here are just for the area that is managed under Home Farm, which is in-house by Clinton Devon Estates. But with the areas that we're looking to take out of agriculture and make entirely for nature, that's about 7% of the area, which on top of the 26% already managed as a National Nature Reserve brings us well into that 30 by 30 commitment. These are some images that we've had mocked up just to show kind of generic landscapes across our project area, how the change might look following 20 years or even 10 years of nature recovery. So the top image is the area of Otterton Hill. As you can see, a bit wilder, more scrub, more woodland. The Riverside Corridor, we're hoping to safeguard the footpath and access along that Riverside Corridor and improve the ecological health by having a roughly 20-metre riparian woodland stretching along the riverbank for about 4 kilometres down the river there. And then we've got 3 different brooks in our project area that will feed into the River Otter. All of them are upstream of various villages that have flooded in the past 20 years. And so working partly with the EA's national flood management commitments, but also for ecological health, we're looking at kind of supporting those brooks, taking farming slightly further away from the brooks, doing some more planting around there. In addition, so the Pebblebed Heaths, as I said, it's about 25% of our land area. That is already managed extensively for nature, but about 30% of that is managed by grazing, and the remainder of it is managed through mechanical means. We are hoping through landscape recovery to extend the grazing quite extensively across the heaths, and we'll be seeking funding through landscape recovery for the fencing and infrastructure that's required for that, as well as funding for ranger services and management to be secured over the next 20 years. Part of landscape recovery as a whole is we have to deliver an engagement offer. It's one of the 6 key plans DEFRA has asked for. And this engagement will really look at how do we support the conservation outcomes of the whole project, particularly on the Pebblebed Heaths and the National Nature Reserve, but across the whole area in general, with a particular concern for managing visitor pressure on the sensitive habitats. And then more generally across the area, so across those 14 different tenancies that we have, we're looking at bespoke farm plans. These have been worked out with each of the tenants. So they are what the tenants would like, not just us demanding. And they're looking at how can we, across farms, have a more joined up approach. So can the wildflower margins of different fields match up to create these ecological corridors? We're looking at where can water be managed more effectively? Can we create ponds and water bodies to store the water in the landscape to help with the increasing droughts in the summer that we're going to be seeing over the next 20 years? And how can farm operations as a whole be altered to improve soil management and soil quality, an essential part of nature recovery? And then finally, the last aspect of the project is looking at access provision across the area. Generally in our area, it's got some of the highest access across all of Devon, and it's considered pretty good. But DEFRA has asked us to consider how can we be more inclusive and accessible with access. Our main proposal is we have a 4-kilometre stretch of disused railway line that's currently used for farming operations that make it prohibitive to use by cyclists, walkers and horse riders. If the landscape recovery proposals go ahead for the farming operations, it does open up the possibility of making that railway line a access route all the way down the valley, linking up 3 different villages. So that's going to be our main proposal. We are also considering efforts to slow down erosion on the Riverside footpath, which is the favourite access route in the area, have more access around Otterton Hill, bringing people into connection with that conservation grazing part of nature and increasing our permissive access offer. So all of the landscape recovery actions are dependent on getting planning consent, permissions and permits as appropriate for any land use change or any changes to access. So these will all be sought following our agreement in principle with DEFRA. So kind of early 2027 we'll be starting that process of seeking these permissions. One other thing with DEFRA is they would like these projects to find some way to either match fund or self-fund in the long term. So looking at BNG, biodiversity net gain markets and carbon credits. Both of those markets are not as there as DEFRA would like them to be. And we're definitely going to need to consider diversification opportunities in order to fund some of the long-term maintenance or post-20-year, post-landscape recovery continuations of things like the railway line as an access route. So in the longer run, we would be seeking those sort of permissions from the council, and we're just kind of wanting to lay the ground now. Not to ask for your approval now, but to make sure that it doesn't come out of nowhere for you in the future. So thank you very much. Pass over to Gavin.
Over to you, Gavin. Thank you very much, Beth, for your presentation. Actually, before we actually go on to Gavin, yes, questions? Yes, Councillor Levine.
Could you tell me, The River Otter is known to be one of the most polluted rivers in East Devon, and the estuary, I was reading that it's considered to be biologically dead. So how does that affect all the plans for the riparian corridors, etc., and the land improvement?
Who would like to pick that one up? Beth or Kendall?
I'm going to respond to the riparian corridor bit and then pass over to Kendall for the estuary comment, if that's okay. So part of the reason for delivering landscape recovery is the hope that through all the different activities that we will be doing in terms of improving the farming, creating wetland along the river plain, they will all help improve the health of the river. So we are not starting from a point where the river health is good. We are starting from a point where it's poor, and over the next 20 years we want to see that improve through the landscape recovery. I'm not sure about the health of the otter estuary, so I'm going to pass over to my colleague.
Hello, Kendall Archer, I work for Clinton Nevin Estates. So as part of our agreement with the Environment Agency, when we delivered the salt marsh and mudflat at the Lower Otter Estuary, we had to commit to an environmental management plan with them over years. So we have a ranger in post who carries out that monitoring across the estuary for us. So his name's Rick Lockwood. So he'll look at things like birds, species that we see. A lot of the ongoing monitoring we do is also through citizen science. So we look at fish populations and long-term as well. What you can't see is the health underground, so all the invertebrates that are a really good indicator of health across the estuary. So we are committed to monitoring and making sure that it's a healthy environment and habitat.
Thank you, Kendall, for that answer.
I
You
just
want to
wanted
come?
to say I'm really glad to hear that.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Young?
Yeah, just to help on the quality of the river. This question came up at another meeting recently, and Sam Bridgewater confirmed that the fish are still quite happy in those waters, although there is it's our poor river quality at the moment, as specified by the Environment Agency. This is mainly to do with agricultural runoff and, as we know, the sewage issue, and that is being looked at separately. But a scheme like this will clean up the river dramatically, especially in the upland areas where we can put weepy dams and things like that.
Thank you, Jeff, for that clarification. I've got a question, and say it's just a brief one. I love the idea of the public access along the railway track. Just out of interest, which villages will be linked on that one, please?
So that will link Newton Popperford to Colleton Riley to Otterton. There is then the Riverside footpath, which is what we're hoping to safeguard through riparian planting. That will then link down to Budley, so you then get all the way down.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Matt Hall?
Forgive me if I'm a little apprehensive, but this table leg has busted, so I'm just slightly wary. Is this entire project solely reliant on the input of DEFRA? If DEFRA, for whatever reason, decided not to, is there still other ways and avenues that some parts of the projects could come to fruition?
Yes, is the short answer. The way the project's been put together is the goal is to have this joined up landscape scale approach, which would need DEFRA backing and DEFRA funding. But there are different sections of the project that could be continued if other funding was sought elsewhere on a smaller scale, or diversification options were able to fund it. So many of the individual bespoke farm plans might not happen or there might not be the changes from their current farming model if they can just continue under the SFI agreements that they currently have. But things like the increased grazing on the heaths or the Otterton Hill section, they may well still continue in isolation should the funding be found elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus Hartnell.
Hi there, thanks. Is all the land within the project area owned by Clinton Devon Estates or tenants of them?
About 98% is, so we're in a really lucky position compared to many of the other 56 landscape recovery projects, in that the majority of the land is owned by the estate. Not all of it is managed by the estate, so there are a number of different management partners on the National Nature Reserve, and then we do have 2 individual landowners who are not connected to the National Nature Reserve, who are part of the project.
Thank you. But you've got good buy-in from everyone, by sounds of things. Excellent. Do I see any more questions? No? Thank you. Moving over to Gavin in the Loppet Landscape Valley and Blackdown Hills. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Very nice to be here this evening. I'm benefiting from what Beth has already said in terms of the background to landscape recovery as a scheme. They can obviously answer any further questions on that. We're different from Clinton Devon Estates in a number of ways, and I'm going to take you up to the top of the Otter catchment where our project is based. So if you can tell from that map, that shows the topography of East Devon and the Blackdown Hills. We are in one of the small steep-sided valleys up above Honiton that contains the village of Loppet itself. Unlike Clinton Devon, we are a landscape of small farms, small privately owned farms, and there are 40 partners in our project, members with differing sizes of landholding that are part of our scheme. The nature of our landscape is very typical of the Blackdown Hills as a whole. And if I can just run this. Oh, sorry, there wasn't supposed to be audio on that. I'm going to stop that. That's one of my colleagues talking over me. The landscape that I'm sure, be familiar with of the Blackdown Hills, of the flat plateaus, the steep scarps, and the lower valleys with the rivers running through them. So we are one of the tributaries of the Otter, the River Love, that rises at the top of the Loppet Valley on Hentsmoor, site of special scientific interest, runs down and joins the Otter at Langford Bridge, well-known flooding location. The structure of that landscape is the basis upon which we've designed our scheme. So the flat plateau, for the most part, is fairly good quality farmed land, cropped and pastured. The steep slopes, for the most part, are poor rough grazing, secondary woodland, bracken, heath and mire. The lower valleys, the bright green there, are again relatively good quality farmland with a smattering of older wildlife habitats still remaining within them. And then the river corridor runs through the bottom of the valley. Oops. Shut up, Dave. So that structure we've split up into zones, and within those zones, we've designed our proposition for landscape recovery. So the plateau, as I say, what we describe as the springline zone, the lower valley, and the river corridor. Now, in terms of environmental function, the springline is crucial because you will appreciate that rain that falls on the plateau percolates through the green sand. Where the green sand meets the clay, that water emerges as a spring line at pretty much the same elevation all the way around the edges of the valley. The degree to which that spring line and the vegetation and the land around it has been drained historically has a bearing on the speed at which water then follows down into the valley and flows into the river. So part of our offer is to improve, if you like, the sponge-like quality of that spring line so that more water is held back by reburying groundwater in land which historically and naturally would have been boggier. The other key factor for designing our scheme is the complexity of our soils. So that rather psychedelic map actually shows the soil, the distribution of different soil types across the valley. So you can pick out the plateau on the top in orange and yellow, the springline zone in green, and the marl soils, the deeper clays further down the valley in pink. We're fortunate that this area was subject to very detailed soil survey back in the 1970s, and we're able to benefit from that in targeting our management interventions very closely to soil type, both in terms of what the potential of those soils is for habitat and habitat restoration, and also crucially, their potential for sustainable farming into the future. We are a partnership of farmers. We set up the Landscape Recovery project as a vehicle for entering into landscape recovery by simply a group of farmers coming together, creating a new CIC and bidding to DEFRA. We have no backing, we have no collateral, we started from scratch. The first month of my job involved setting up my office and plugging in a computer. So coming back to a question that was posed at the end of the previous session, when it comes to our reliance upon DEFRA funding, we are utterly reliant on DEFRA funding. We have no other funding to fall back on. And because of our relatively isolated position up into the Blackdown Hills, our ability to access particularly BNG funding is less well developed even than Clinton's, though as Beth says, the maturity of that market is very limited at the moment. But if you just see that soil structure for a moment and just picture that into this sort of diagrammatic structure of how we are proposing to DEFRA that we would change and evolve our landscape to make it more sustainable into the future. On the plateau, our focus will remain on farming, on sustainable agriculture into the future. There are good quality soils up there. They are compacted to a certain extent. They are degraded to a certain extent. Their capacity to absorb water could be much improved. But at the same time, if we could return to perhaps something of more traditional rotations that do involve a cropping period and move more towards herbal lays where there's a more diverse mixture of species in the sward, then there's capacity for the environmental function of that plateau to improve and for its productivity sustainably to be improved into the future. Moving on to the spring line, we're looking, as I say, to try and rebury more groundwater in that zone. It's rough grassland as it stands, and its capacity to be restored to habitat is considerable. At the top of the valley, we have Hentsmoor SSSI, and we need to move that site into favourable condition, as it's termed by Natural England, and there's a considerable amount of work to do that. Coming round the springline zone, sitting out at the southern end of the valley is Dumpton Hill with its hill fort. And again, those soils surround the base of Dumpton, and there's scope for habitat extension from what the National Trust already manages. Going down into the lower valley, There's scope to pick out the existing fragmented wildlife habitats, flower-rich meadows, etc., and to join those up more concertedly into something more cohesive while continuing the agricultural productivity of the land around them. And then for the river corridor itself, there is scope to improve the quality of the Love in a number of ways, which I'll come back to. So the 40 land holdings that have come together, we have with them constructed this set of proposals for what we will be putting to DEFRA. Difficult for you to pick out the detail there, but that basically shows the diversity of different types of land management intervention that we're proposing across that area. That constitutes about 1,400 hectares altogether, with a considerable amount of that, about half of that going into habitat and the rest going into improved soil structure and sustainable agriculture. As I say, this is a project about people on the ground. It's about small farms. It's about recognizing the change that farming families have gone through over the last 20 years. The decline in dairying, for example. 20 years ago, there were 20 dairy herds in the Lupit Valley. Today, there's 2. The degree to which those farms have already adapted to changing markets and changing circumstances is enormous. And we're presenting them with an opportunity to adapt again to another change, to a change of policy towards public money for public goods. That's not an easy adaptation for those small farms to contemplate, certainly not individually and even collectively. And the challenge of working collaboratively to make the most of an opportunity like this is considerable. Just briefly, the distribution of holdings by size and by category. So the majority, a larger proportion of our holdings are commercial farms. A lot are smaller holdings which let all of their grazing to their neighbours. We've had less in terms of farm amalgamation in the Lupit Valley than in elsewhere in the Black Downs, but still there's a lot of farms that are not run by people who actively farm, but their neighbours are still dependent on the pasture that is available on those holdings. A small number of very small sort of recreational holdings, and then a small number still of holdings owned by conservation organisations. In terms of distribution, size distribution, they obviously tend towards the smaller size. So we've got a substantial number of very small holdings, a medium number of middle-sized ones that just veer into being commercial, and then a smaller number of truly commercial units. The other defining feature of the Lupit Valley is the amount of common land we have. So the Lupit Commons own 224 hectares of common land, unusual in that the common land belongs to the commoners. The freehold of the commons was sold to the commoners in 1961 and is run by a committee of them as active commoners. Included within that is Hentsmoor SSI itself, which is part of the Lupit Commons and has been managed by them very well over the last 20 years, and landscape recovery would take them to the next stage. Just a view from Hentsmoor down towards Dumpton Hill, back in, if you can remember, the summer. On Hentsmoor itself, we have, if you like, the crown jewels of wildlife habitats within our valley. So the springline mires, which obviously from an agricultural point of view are very poor, but from a wildlife point of view are absolutely priceless. We have a lot of very rare plant species on Hentsmoor and strong populations of things like the raft spider on the right there. Sorry if you don't like spiders. One of the largest native spiders in Britain, and one that could benefit from further re-wetting of land that surrounds Hentsmoor. Just going back to that picture, if you look at that pink zone that runs down from Hentsmoor in the north, quite a lot of that land is sort of poor quality, semi-drained, rushy sort of ground, which is in some ways not very useful agriculturally, and in some ways not very useful, as it were, environmentally. It's not serving either function very well. So where it fits with farm operations, we're proposing to take some of the field parcels on the spring line and to re-wet them, literally to break up drains, to block ditches, and to allow the water table to restore into what is, in many cases, effectively oxidized peat that is waiting there to potentially serve its original function again. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the valley, the river itself, the River Love, is in relatively good condition, but it has suffered from the increases in intensity of rainfall, like everywhere else, and areas of the channel have now incised very deeply, so during spatey rainfall events, they don't flood. The river can't flood out onto its floodplain; it's too deep. And in some cases, there are opportunities for us to look at restoring river channel function by raising the bed level. And in some cases, for instance, this one, we're looking at extending the width of the river corridor, so effectively excavating out that bank so that the river has a wider corridor within which to behave more naturally and to sort of re-wiggle itself in the future. So that's our most substantial sort of engineering change that we're proposing right at the bottom of the Love, close to where it joins the Otter. And of course, the joker in the pack in our landscape, just as in the rest of the Otter Valley, are the beavers. Beavers are already well established on the Love, some very well fortified encampments that the beavers have on Hents Moor and other places on the river. And part of the challenge for us is to see how we work with the grain of what the beavers are already achieving in trying to improve that river quality even more. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin, for all that. Really exciting if you can get it off the ground and get the funding for it. Have we got, from outside committee, any questions or comments?
Oh.
Councillor Jeffries.
Sorry, I was being Jeff there for a minute. Just to say this is really, really welcome. It's great to see these projects expanding and being landscape scale. I should declare I live in Luppet, just off the spring line, so it's lovely to have a tour of that and recommend to anybody to go and experience the Hents Moor in particular. It's absolutely glorious, especially in the summer. I think you've got a photo under one of my favourite trees in the world, looking down the valley, and the raft spiders are quite something to behold, and I personally love them. So probably slightly gushing, but I'm not adding any useful questions particularly. But yeah, great project and fantastic to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into committee, any comments, questions? Councillor Mackinder.
This is really for both of or in fact for all three of the projects. There's the really impressive array of different objectives in all of these projects. What I'm assuming I hope you'll be doing is gathering a lot of data and making that data freely available, and ideally basing this on current science, because I noticed there was that statement in there that it's science-driven projects, and hopefully feeding that back into the scientific literature so that other projects elsewhere will be able to draw from this as well. So if in future we can look back and say, okay, our objectives was to do these percentages or this increase in carbon storage, yeah, we've got the data now to show that. We've achieved that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to respond to that, I mean, it's one of the good features of this scheme compared with previous ones like Countryside Stewardship, that DEFRA is very, very anxious that we put in place a baseline of data so that we can measure change over a period. Doing that is onerous, to say the least. It's a massive task to put together the databases that we are required to submit as part of demonstrating what our uplift might be over time. But certainly the ingredients will be in place to provide what you're saying, that data for the future.
Anyone else on committee? Councillor Roy Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Lappet is probably my favourite village in East Devon. I canvassed there first in 1976 for the seat for East Devon Council, which I failed to get. Many children at school came from Lappet. We had an agricultural class, and it does really sadden me that all these dairy farms are gone in Lappet. And sitting over there, we have Bethany Collins, her mother and grandmother. Their parents were the last farm I know of in East Devon to be having a pony and trap. And that was their main transport into Honiton, and that carried on into the 60s, 1960s. So there was a great history in Lappet. The pub is still there, amazingly. I went to Lappet I think it was Wednesday. I went to Church and Ford to a transitional meeting, and there were a small group there in the pub, and they were talking about various schemes in Lappet. I'm sorry, I've forgotten their names, but I'm sure that Mr. Sanders knows who I'm talking about. And it was quite interesting because they bought some kilns. They bought kilns. So this time of year, farmers do hedge laying. And the idea is that they burn the trimmings in the kilns. And then somehow they had a water tank. They seem to put it in there, and then they take this, I suppose it'd be like charcoal, and they take it round and use it on farms to mop up animal residues that are coming out of dung heaps and things, and spreading this contraption back on the land. And they say that is increasing all the beetles and everything else. But they also they got another group there, which is probably one of the first in Devon. They meet in at Hemioch on Saturday, and they repair small electrical things or anything else rather than letting it go to landfill. I've never been to one, so I'm hoping to go on Saturday.
I can say there's a lot of repair cafes around in
But I
Devon.
understand-
But I would say, is there something relevant to our presentations you want to say, Roy?
Yes, so it's not really something I've studied, but I'm very, very interested in following up and looking forward to going to meet them all on Saturday. And they said they would help me with my iPad because I'm only about 70% proficient. So then they're out to help anybody, really. And it's a great community spirit. The people came from, there was one gentleman there from Buckland St Mary, and he's got cider presses which they hire out so people with small orchards can turn their fruit into juice.
There's a lot of initiatives out there to help people, but as we're talking about coming back to what's been presented to us, it's quite exciting to see these little farms and small holdings being brought together to actually evolve a environmental, addition to what's going on in the world, and we want to try and encourage this sort of thing. I had a question, I'm going to take on now, Roy, thank you, about the access for the public I know they've got Lappet Common, but this is going down through the valley a bit more. How much access will be available for the public to see what's going on as and when it gets off the ground? Thank you.
Sure. Well, we benefit from the fact that all of the commons are open access under the Crow Act. So we're looking to extend the quality of that access. There's already a permissive loop trail on Hartridge run by the commons, and we're going to add a second loop trail to that. So there's further diversity of opportunity there. There is a public footpath that runs up through the middle of Hence Moor, which you would have to be very bold to try and follow at the moment. and we've costed to replace considerable sections of that with boardwalk so that it's possible to walk fairly safely up through that valuable site. So it's a matter of consolidating and improving existing open access. The public footpath network in Luppet is pretty sparse, it has to be said, and there isn't a lot of appetite, to be honest, for creating more permanent access, but there is plenty of appetite for creating managed access in terms of more scope for school visits and organised visits and educational activities, which is what we will focus on.
Thank you, that's very encouraging. Councillor Levine?
A project with the river Love at its middle deserves our support. So can I propose the motion, please?
You certainly can, and say that we are actually, it's a recommendation that to note the report and support the nature recovery ambitions of the Heath to Sea and Luppet Landscape Partnership, landscape recovery projects. And there is a little caveat that where required, planning and other approvals will need to be secured. So that's a recommendation to note it. And have we got a seconder? Councillor Mackinder. I think we are all in favour of this going ahead and look forward to hopefully the fruition of it all. And I think I read in the report that actually the National Trust would like to come to speak to us from Killerton at a later date when they've got the relevant information. So I think that's a full support from all of us. I do have one question about the messaging, because it's such positive projects. How are you getting it out to the general public, or when will you be getting it out to the general public for them to actually know and understand what's going on? Because it's a really exciting thing to be happening, and it also helps the profile of certainly both of your groups to actually showcase what you're doing. And I think it's really important to get that message out there, and because it is such a positive thing to be doing. Thank you.
So in terms of the messaging, we've done quite a lot in the last year and a half of public engagement around the project and understanding the public's wants, especially around access, but also what they like to see in the landscape and what they like and not want to see gone. So we've done a fair amount of that over the last year. Now we're into this. The next year is going to be this waiting game questioning with DEFRA. So the public engagement is easing slightly whilst we find out what we can share. From 2027, when hopefully both our projects get the confirmation to go ahead, there will be kind of another round of engagement. Our engagement, because we have quite a lot of villages, and we've got Budleigh Salterton, which is a fairly decent sized town. So we do have a focus on keeping the general public happy, and we have visitors from all over the area come to the Pebblebed Heath, so we have a lot of focus on engaging with them. So we have a dedicated website for our project. It's on the slides, but it's www.heathstosea.com. That's the starting point for all of our engagement, and then we use the Clinton Devon Estates social media and the Pebblebed Heath Conservation Trust social media. And we also put it into all of the local parish newsletters and do poster flyering as well, as necessary.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I think that now concludes our meeting, and thank you very much for your input, everyone. Thank you. No, it doesn't, sorry.
I thought you'd chosen to.
No, we aren't going. I apologise. I would say we'll just take a minute so people can leave and not disturb things. Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you that my wife used to work for the European Association of Exploration Geophysicists. And she came home one day and told me that the people who are looking for oil were using love waves. And I thought, people who were looking for oil were using love waves to look for oil. And I thought it was wonderful.
Righty-ho, I think we will now carry on with the meeting, which there is a little bit more. Don't. Agenda item 8, the work programme 2025-26, pages 36 to 51. It's basically our work programme, and to consider, well, what's coming up, we have got, hopefully, the housing strategy in March, the 26th of March, and hopefully the SANGS delivery strategy, but we will await the confirmation of that SANGS one, but that's happening. And we've got other items on there like the beach hut arrangements and charging review, but we've got to be confirmed on dates on that. And I think the e-petition scheme, we're still waiting for can I hand over to that one to you? I can't remember the wording for it, Sarah, what we're waiting for to get that live.
Yes, so that is being progressed. My understanding is that there was a delay preparing the data protection impact assessment, but that's now been completed. So we're just waiting to hear from Strata. So that should be delivered hopefully imminently.
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. That was just an update on the petitions which has come through from here. We have also got on there the Cabinet Forward Plan. I don't know if anyone from the committee wishes to receive a report on key decisions prior to Cabinet on that list. I don't see any indication. Councillor Mackinder?
So a minor thing on page 41, the top 2 items on that page have got the same document to be considered by Cabinet. They'd sound like different projects to me. Thank you.
I would say we'll have a look at that, but
yeah, they both claim to be Colliford Road and Fossway viability assessment, but the second one relates to Cloakham Lawns, which I'm fairly sure is in Axminster.
Ah, well spotted. Thank you. But nothing to consider, I don't think. And lastly, we have got where are we? Lost it. The item which was going to be a proposal form, which has been submitted by Councillor Charlotte Fitzgerald about saunas being cited and given permissions on EDD land or adjacent to. This matter is now being progressed offline by officers in consultation with Councillor Fitzgerald, and at the moment it's not appropriate to add it to the committee's work programme, but if Councillor Fitzgerald wants to bring it back forward, and she's wants to actually have a written policy, it will come back to us in due course. Okay. Councillor Matt Hall?
Surely as a council, as we move towards local government reorganisation, we need to make sure that all our policies are written down. There's no point in having policies which aren't written down, that then if somebody through the reorganisation then departs to pastures new, we lose that information. That doesn't seem to be very good to me, personally.
I think, I agree there, but I think at the moment we need to let it sit, and I will revisit it with the officer in charge of it, and I will have words with him to see where we're going with that one. Councillor Mackinder?
Do we have any idea on the timescale for that? Because I noted in this report that it had been already about a year wandering through processes within the council. So is there going to be a long delay, or is it a relatively short period before officers will be able to come up with a suggestion as to what the council should be doing?
I think it's actually only been active for the last month and a half. We've been waiting for it to be signed up or off to come here. I don't know if Anita can add something to that one.
That one, let's see if that works. I think there's been an ongoing discussion. I think initially the sites were declined, and some of that's about planning, because so many of our beaches are just really not suitable. Plus issues then about, I can look towards Charlie, about national landscapes and smoke-free zone, or not smoke-free zones, but is it appropriate to have burning fuels in those locations? I can see Councillor Young has his hand up. So I think it is being discussed. I think we did have a policy, not a policy. I think we were tending to say no because they were tricky locations, but I think Tim's team are now looking at that again and trying to see if there is a way of facilitating them as opposed to taking the other approach. Charlie's nodding. Yeah.
Thank you, Anita. I think you would like to say something, Councillor Young? Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a policy for concessions, and this would be a concession, but it's a different type of concession to ice cream parlours or tea shops, and they want them in different locations. And where do we draw the line? Where do we put them? We don't have. It's our policy that we don't have concessions on the beach. So they want them on the promenades. Where do we put them on the promenades that isn't in the way of pedestrians? And then there is, well, if you give them permission, do we give a coffee vendor permission? So it's a bigger issue than just allowing a sauna on the beach. So there's a lot of ifs and a lot of buts, and I've noticed that most national landscape areas have declined these sort of applications.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Mackinder?
I was just going to say we could take a lead from other councils where such things are permitted. And okay, maybe not in a national landscape, but I know that there are such things in areas like Brighton, so it's obviously possible. It may be we can have a policy which is suitably worded that these things can be permitted when they're in a place which is appropriate, but when they're in a, say, ecologically sensitive area where we don't want fires, that would be a solid reason then to say, well, this is not a clever idea. Thank you.
Yes, and I think that could well be where Councillor Child is at, but we will wait. I'll wait to hear from him as to how they intend to progress. Thank you. And now I think that is the end of the meeting, confirmed by everyone else. Thank you for your input, everyone, and have a good night. Thank you.